Boom! According to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. My name is Hiko Simon. It's great to see you as always. Sorry for the last minute setup tonight. Just went through and just popped out the tweets just before I went live today. Great to see already. We've got PB, indeed with Kaboom, question mark. We've got Andrea Moboy, boom, good to have you. Odie Jr., bada boom, and a boom emoji, thank you for that. We've also got Quint Rankin. Ada Void, good morning to you. Cobras Tenchi, TT runs on fossil fuels. What? Not necessarily, it's the crank starter. They used to use those on old cars, which back in the day, around the time of the Model T, there were actually more electric cars than there were combustion cars. So there you go. I don't know what it runs on. It runs on peanuts. I think that's what we run on here. Peanuts and hopes and prayers. I think a combination. Quentin Rankin, good to see you. I think I've already said hello to you. Remember, if you are in the chat, say hello and do what Odie Jr. did. Just say my name and it flashes up orange, and I will pay attention to you. If you got a question, a request, a topic, anything like that, I'm quite happy to do that. Again, the news this week in Japan has been pretty low-key. It's almost all just every night been non-stop Ukraine war situation and how that's evolving. I'll talk about a few stories about how that sort of is, how it's relating to Japan, but to tell you the truth, there isn't a lot. Just the fact that, some of the news stories this week that were coming out with things like changing school rules about dyeing hair, the history of a prohibited haircut of an undercut where you they call it a two-tone, where you just kind of have it with no fading, where you just have it really short around the ears and the back of the head, and how that's actually still against school rules in some places and people don't remember why. That's the level of news this week. And I think when as horrible as the war in Ukraine is, and all the other 59 wars happening at the moment, it does help to put things in context that we're very lucky to have, talk about first world problems, and not even just first world, just we're very lucky to have boring problems to deal with. That's certainly something that I like about Japan. It's something that brought me to Japan, even from a place like New Zealand, where, honestly, just not having to worry about stuff getting stolen. Which, even though New Zealand, it doesn't happen often, it still happens more, and you have to think about it. You just don't have to think about stuff like that here. Different people have different experiences, of course, but that's mine. Milchman too, boom, good to see you. One Johnson waving right back at you. Mr. Cordy Champ, almost missed out. Oh, never happened. John Carlo Lanoy, good to have you. Good evening. Representative from the Philippines. We've got, nice to see everybody rolling in. In terms of the COVID situation, for those interested, the 7-day moving average, which I like that number because it kind of smooths out all the spikes when you have public holidays and whatever. And, the single day, even week over week, it can sometimes be a bit weird where you have a public holiday or some reason that people don't go one day and they all go the next day. So it all evens out after 7 days. And right now the average is 8,700 cases a day, but it's going down week over week about 20% every week. So, at this rate, we'll be down to hopefully below 7,000 by this time next week. Still remembering that the peak of the last wave in Tokyo was 5,000. Also remembering that given that the weather is getting better and people are planning their hanami parties and so on, probably for about a week or two from now, seems pretty likely. By the way, though, we had a couple of really warm days this week, 20 degrees the other day. It's been near the 20 degrees today. So now all the cherry blossoms, they got the little buds all over them. So it seems pretty clear that about a week from now is probably when we're going to see a proper hanami in Tokyo. I imagine that's going to lead to a lot of parties, given that the COVID situation is also improving, and that is probably going to lead to more cases. But although there's always about a 2-week lag to that, so we'll see. Hopefully, it won't be too bad. But still, it's a good trend. I mean, even though it's going down very, very slowly, and it still isn't like, run around naked, painted purple or anything. It's not at that level. It still is worse than it ever was in any of the previous waves. It's easy to forget that, given that it's getting relatively better. It still is better. And, of course, other things. In fact, I didn't include in one of the stories, but with the school year about to start in April in Japan, the schools and universities are saying, the government is saying that they're only going to let in 3,500 people per day, and then 5,000 per day isn't enough to get in the 150,000 students waiting to start the new school year, and they're still going to cancel. And that's going to disrupt Japan's relations with other universities and schools overseas. So the Ministry of Education said they're going to try to get like 100,000 students in the next month, separate to the quarantine quotas. And indeed, the government is looking at matching what other countries are doing, about even abandoning the need for quarantine from many countries where COVID has seemed to be under control, which at the moment includes the United States. Also interesting, just by comparison, that throughout the pandemic so far, on a per capita basis, South Korea has been doing much better than Japan. For whatever reason, South Korea, same with New Zealand, by the way. Maybe the fact that people haven't caught it so much until now, and maybe it's generated habits around, being used to like keeping it at bay. Certainly in the case of New Zealand more than South Korea, but certainly it seems to be going pretty wild in those countries at the moment. So again, here it's never been good, but it's never been quite that bad, and that still seems to be the case at the moment, even though it's the worst it's been. Certainly I can say that, like at my lad's school, I'm getting emails like every day. It used to be that, once every few months there'd be a kid in a class, and that class, all the kids would get tested and they'd decide what to do. But lately it's like every day there's multiple classes, kids have it. It does definitely seem like it's going around a lot more. That said, little bits of good news. It does seem to be improving. Tim the Asian Ink, boom, 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 indeed. Oh, Milchman too got a Vermillo keyboard for Christmas after me showing it. How do you like it? Actually, I'm curious. Put in the comments what specs you got for it. I tell you, I still think this is like one of the best purchases. I love this, and whenever it's in like photos and stuff like that, people say, "Oh, what's that keyboard? Show me." So yeah, and it's awesome. It feels awesome. I love the fact that I designed it. So I'm still like, this is to me one of the best purchases I've done. Just the fact, it's made in China, but it's made by hand. It's artisanal, and it's really good quality. So I'm a huge fan of my keyboard. But that said, you got yours at Christmas. You've used it for a while now. I'm really curious what your thoughts are, Milchman too. If you use a US layout keyboard, you can get keyboards that I can't get, like the wireless ones. You can't get those for Japan, at least not with the Japanese keyboard layout, which my fingers are like muscle memory too. So I'm super jealous that you have more choice than me as well. That is awesome, actually. DJ Sunny Side Up, hey, good to see you. And so DJ Sunny Side Up, actually, when he saw my running videos, he threw me over some tracks, and I really liked one of them in particular, which I put on Wednesday. I put up a running track, and it came out really, really well with the music. So that was a track that DJ Sunny Side Up made. You can check it out from my midweek video. I actually also went running last night, and I got some footage from it that I really liked, and I was just playing around with the Beat Leap video software, which has some licensed music that you could use, and I found a track that I really liked. So I was planning to wait and only put up one running video per week, but I really liked the track I found yesterday, and I had some really good video from it, so I did put up another track last night. But DJ Sunny Side Up, I've kind of told them I always run at about 168 BPM. So if you make music like either 84 BPM or 168 BPM and make it kind of like with a good beat that goes with the running and stuff like that, and make me, and he makes some really cool hip hop stuff. You can check out his YouTube channel. He posts really cool vids. So thank you for the track. And I'm going to post some of his music on my videos as well if he makes tracks, which you don't have to do, but I certainly do appreciate it if you do. And that was really, really fun figuring out how to edit the video beat match to your music. So thank you, DJ Sunny Side Up, and I hope that you're well. Very cool with all that you're going surfing and stuff like that as well. It's something that I miss. Who else we got in here? We've got Aaron, moderator. Great to see you as always. Butter boom. Oh, I like it. Butter boom in a wave. That's triggering and clever all at the same time. Sasuga, Aaron. Thank you for that. We've got Nick. Yo indeed. North Korea has actually, I think they have minus cases. I think that people who actually visit North Korea with it become instantly cured. It's kind of funny. They must be feeling good at the moment, not looking like the craziest country in the world. In fact, I'd actually say that, developing nukes and ICBMs looks like a pretty smart strategy for avoiding a big country invading you. It's kind of making sense. Although, I would love for them to be integrated with the rest of the world, but that's a thing. Yes, Setsuna, good to have you in here. Hi, indeed. Email, not a fax. Who knows? Magpie 882, long time no see. Boop. Yes, indeed. Hi, everyone. John Carlo Illinois, is Japan accepting refugees from Ukraine? We're going to get into that in the topics in a little bit. Never fear, Shubas is here, a man from Panama. Good to have you with us. In fact, I don't know if you are a man, you could be a woman. Our person from Panama, doesn't really matter. It's one thing that I like about Japanese is that you don't have to attach a gender to everything. It's kind of funny with European languages how even like table and chair has to be like male or female. English, we attach it only to people generally, but even then, like, who cares, right? Japanese is like you can describe people and have no idea what their gender is and still perfectly get through a conversation, something that I like. But anyway, I digress. Shubas, excellent to have you with us. Hope you're enjoying some nice Panamanian coffee, which I would love to have myself, although not right now. I'd stay up all night. But yes, believe in yourself. Greetings, great to have you in here. Rainbow, very clever name there. I don't recognize the handle either, so always nice to have a new commenter. Oi, indeed, good to have you. Milchman 2 got crazy colors too. Nice. MX blue. Oh, 10 kilos. So you went for the blue switches. Okay. With cable and US layout, indeed. Switch from German. Love it. You can definitely feel the quality. It's solid. You got blue switches, so you got really clicky ones. I've had a blue switch. I thought you get mechanical. You want it to sound mechanical, so get blue switches. I did do that, and I regretted it. Now I go for silent switches. But there again, I mean, they feel great, right? And especially if you use it for gaming and you're not worrying about bothering anybody. Yeah, I'm really cool. I'm really glad you got that. I can't say how much. I mean, it's like a wallet, right? A keyboard, especially at the moment where you're working from home. You use it every day, and so it's worth spending a little bit more to get something that's comfortable, given that, you're going to spend so much time with it. So you got the 10 keyless as well. Yeah, honestly, I'm thinking about getting a second one. If I can get a wireless Japanese one, I'd get a 10 keyless like you, and I'd use it in the office when we go back to work. Love it. Anyway, Milchman, that's thank you for telling me that. Actually, I'm super stoked that you actually picked that up from me. They're just wonderful. So yeah, they should be paying me for this endorsement, but they should give me another keyboard for free for this endorsement. But yeah, I had to pay for it, and it's not cheap, but it's still worth it. Oh, there's the battery powered additional light going out, but I have two more, so it's okay. Anyway, we've got traveling Gabriel, long time no see, got up early for me. I'm glad that you did. Thank you for joining. Great to see you. The Linksy project. So many people I haven't seen names pop up in the chat in a while. A lot of US keyboards layout boards can have firmware upgrades or modifications to make them any layout you want. Add Japanese keycaps would have you all set. Indeed, it kind of works, although really for the Japanese keyboard you need like the UK style layout, which has the big sort of blocky enter key that you can see. The US layout has like a kind of one across here. I know that if you're clever, and there are keyboards that are made that you can switch the keys on the layout and you can reprogram, but yeah, like I say, I've just become muscle memorized to the Japanese layout, which is just weird. But people, if you're used to US, that is, of course, you have the whole world at your feet. That's the most common layout, and really that's the only one. It's the one I should have learned. But yes, definitely not the craziest kid on the block anymore. Indeed, just switching through. I think I've caught up to everybody saying hello, so I might as well get into the topics. We are 17 minutes in. Been here a few years, just a quiet one, Rainbow. Well, good to have you in here, Rainbow. Thank you for saying hello. And anyone else, I really do love it. I just love to see who's in here and just to say hello to people and shout out names. As I said earlier, just say my name if you want to ask for a topic or anything like that. Oh, Eric Bailey, good to see you. Thank heavens, I can now finally relax. Indeed, good to have you in here. Let's jump in. First of all, the big news this week, Japan accepts 8 Ukrainians displaced by the Russian invasion. Now, I know what you're thinking. They're really accepting. I mean, Japan only accepts like 20 people per year, like from all wars in the world. So how can Japan possibly cope with accepting 8 Ukrainians at once? But don't worry. All of the ones that they're accepting, all 8 of them have relatives already in Japan, and they are restricted to only staying for 90 days. So they'll have to leave. Presumably, Japan's predicting that they will no longer be refugees, obviously, one way or another, that the war will end in 90 days. So they're only allowed here for 90 days and they have family here. Also, they don't want to call them evacuees. They're using a Japanese term, refugees. They're calling them evacuees, or people displaced, because they don't want people going crazy. Japan only accepts around 1% of refugees. It is accepting a lot more. Under pressure, it has increased from about 20 to 47 out of the 393,936 applications lodged in 2020. So, Japan, obviously a lot more humane than it once was. They decided to have a big press conference announcing that they're letting in 8 Ukrainians. Not exactly. I made fun of them for saying that. Actually, somebody pointed out that actually it was Kyoto News decided to flag that, not the Japanese government. But, that's like, 40% of their annual quota, so they might as well have a parade about it, right? It's obviously embarrassing and crazy. And I've given my views on this before, that Japan's position on refugees is untenable. Some people actually on Twitter tried to say to me, well, there's no right. Why would a refugee want to go to Japan? And I've talked with the Japan Refugees Association, done a video with them actually, and I asked that question, and they point out that for many of the people who come to Japan as refugees, when you're running for your life, you literally get on the first flight out that you can get to someplace that seems safe. They often don't know anything about the countries that they go to, but it is a UNHCR rule. And remember, Japan, one of the top funders of the UNHCR, in fact, Mariko Ogata, I think she used to be in charge of the UNHCR for years. And under the rules, when a refugee comes to your safe haven, you have to process them and give them accommodation. And this is something that countries agree to do mutually, because you never know when your citizens are going to be the ones needing the asylum. But yet, when people land in Japan, everyone assumes it must have been a huge mistake, and when I pointed out that, they said, why would people need to go so far away as Japan? And I said, well, people go even further. They go to New Zealand, they go to Australia, they go to America. And that person said, well, yeah, but of course that's because, racially they're more similar. Oh, God. I didn't carry on the conversation at that point. But, people don't care. And again, when they're looking for safety first and they want to go to a place that seems safe, and of course it's natural that they'll go to the neighboring countries first. I mean, don't forget, you want to go somewhere that's safe and nearby. Russia's allowing everybody free trips into Russia, and a lot of them don't want to do that, obviously. So, and even countries that are being, more accommodating, like Poland and Romania and so on. That's one solution. But, a lot of people, when you're with your family, you want to get right away. And that's the situation again. When you can look it up on a map. I have my grandfather's family came from a town called Sulina in Romania, which is as close to Ukraine as you can get on the Romanian map. It's on the Black Sea. They walked across Europe and went to New Zealand in 1910, and they didn't have any relatives in New Zealand. New Zealand was literally as far away in the world as you could possibly get. They went there through UK. They went there for 10 years and then went across. Only a small part of my heritage, but it's a part that's there. They wanted to go somewhere peaceful and safe and nice, where they could get away from all the crap that was still happening in that part of the world, and really has been happening nonstop for hundreds of years, actually. I saw a great video, actually, on what was it? There's like a history. I tweeted about it today. There's like a 2-hour history of the Kievan Rus from like 800 AD to like 1100 or 1200 AD, basically until the Mongols took it all over. But it seems like that part of the world's always had a lot of problems. But again, 8 people. And this is a country that still, remember when Chune Sugihara allowed all of those Jews to transit through Japan and get transit visas, which helped, apparently hundreds or thousands of Jews escape from probable deportation into concentration camps, and was hailed as another kind of a Schindler who rescued a lot of Jews. He did so in complete defiance of orders. He was at where was he? Was it the Lithuanian embassy? And he was, doing it on his own volition, not with the authorization of the Japanese government to give the transit visas. But yet today, Japanese government, likes to hold up him as an example. Whenever someone from Israel is around, they say, yes, we rescued many, many refugees. Thanks to Sugihara. It was in spite of Japan that he rescued people. And again, it's one thing to feel good, like you're paying your UNHCR fees, which Japan does do. But it's also pretty fundamental that Japan should be doing, at least being open to this. In that light, good news is the second story, which just came out this evening, is that in spite of the fact that the government's only let in eight people, which is crazy, the Tokyo governor has said that the Tokyo government will supply housing to as many as 700 Ukrainian refugees. Obviously, this is assuming that the Japanese government will let them in the first place. Also, another question, I suppose, I do notice on my threads that there are a lot of people from Middle East, for example, who are pointing out the double standard in, openness to refugees and coverage and sympathy for victims of war in Europe as opposed to the Middle East. And yeah, that's awkward. There's a lot of double standards at play. There's a lot of people playing favoritism and so on. War is not unique in that part of the world at all. Neither is a lot of the ugly stuff that is happening now has been happening there for a long time. I mean, but and also, I mean, yeah, when the Syrian revolution looked like it was happening, everyone was happy to cheer it on. Everyone was happy to support the Kurds and to support the rebels and so on. But yeah, the story kind of faded when it sort of became clear that the Assad regime and then IS was taking over. Even people that were going over to support the groups that were fighting against Assad and IS were themselves being criminalized. Faced with not being allowed back into their home countries because everyone's afraid that they were all going to become IS or whatever. That sort of turned into a hellhole that. And again, there was sympathy, but when those refugees showed up, what's the difference between a refugee family escaping a war from Aleppo as opposed to Ukraine? Yet a lot, obviously, for people, they're both non-EU citizens. Obviously, there are closer family ties and greater European proximity, but clearly people look at them differently, and that is awkward. Japan was certainly not lining up to accept refugees from Yemen or from Syria, and they are from Ukraine. Why? I don't know. It's complicated. I mean, certainly I think the nature of the war here is there are differences. It's not exactly the same. It is a sovereign state, literally. I mean, this is literally the idea of another country denying the right of another country to exist is pretty rare. It happened when Iraq invaded Kuwait. They used similar rhetoric to what Putin was using, saying that historically Kuwait was never a proper country and it was always been part of Iraq and we're just going to fix that. It's the kind of rhetoric actually that China throws around with its territorial claims, saying that history is wrong. Our borders actually should be back here like they were back in ancient history. And this is where a lot of countries are pointing out. In fact, there was a video, and I think it was actually Aaron that shared it with me last week, that was pointing out, and there was an Israeli historian who was doing some sort of a long interview, and he pointed out that in the Security Council meeting when this all started, the Kenyan ambassador pointed out that Africa knows better than anybody having these sort of arbitrary colonial lines drawn across places, for no reason, separating people and setting up all these things that anyone wanting to fix the lines could start, horrible wars. But in the end of the day, everyone in Africa has kind of accepted that you have to accept the status quo because trying to correct it's going to be so catastrophic for everybody. Yet this is a case of, this isn't an internal civil war, of which there are many examples at the moment, of course. But this is actually literally trying to wipe another country off the map of the world at the moment, and that's the last time that happened on that sort of a scale. In Europe is, it's since World War II pretty much. So it is pretty significant. Maybe that's why Japan is looking at this differently, but still, it is still great to see the support for Ukrainian people. I really wish that there was more that could be done. I understand why people don't want to get into a nuclear war, and people are genuinely afraid that, given how crazy Putin is now acting, that he might be willing to pull out nuclear weapons, and that's got everyone spooked. But at the same time, Personally, I do think it is great that, there are so many weapons being transferred to Ukraine and they're being effectively used in the defense of Ukraine. I feel bad for the soldiers, but I feel worse for the people who are being invaded and attacked by those soldiers. So what can you do, eh? But nonetheless, Japan is certainly, there's a whole bunch of sympathy, there's a whole bunch of coverage, and it's good to see the Tokyo governor at least being prepared to say that they're willing to offer homes to Ukrainian refugees. It's really up to the national government to back up that sort of talk, but we will see. I'll talk a bit more about sanctions and so on in a moment, but let's jump into the comments. I see that there's some people who have come in here. There's one there's one FSB propaganda bot seems to make it into every chat. Thank you for the quick hammer blow there, Aaron. I do appreciate that. We've got Auntie Liana in Yokohama. Great to have you here in the chat. 90 days rules for war victims. Yeah, I guess they figure, no wars last longer than 90 days. It'll all be better then, indeed. Cobra Stenshi, if they accepted them as refugees, would they get a refugee visa, right? Now they're more like on a visitor's visa. That is certainly how it sounds, and that's why they're not calling them refugees. They don't want to get into that precedent, which again, it's totally different to immigration. So I don't know why they are getting so anxious about that. By the way, I'm just going to see if I can adjust the mic. I should be talking more to the front than the top. But yeah, it definitely looks like they're treating them like visitors at the moment, like tourists, which is strange. PB likes the running track. Thank you. The latest one. Yeah. I liked it. I randomly found this track which had these sort of city pop vibes, and I'm just like, I gotta throw that out. Although DJ Sunny Side Up's track was also fire. I loved it and I appreciate it. The Hinamatsuri. But yes. Anyway, I'll try not to read every single comment, but I'll see if I can catch new people in here in the chat. Boom. Get out, Russian bot. Very nice. Vladimir, there's a sanction on you in the comments. I know he wants to get on here any way possible. Also, Aussie Abrahams KB. No, Vlad, sorry. Yes, indeed. Sainted Sir, daylight saving sucks. You know what? I after coming to Japan for many years, I was like, yeah, it's stupid in summer. The sun comes up at 4 o'clock in the morning and goes down at 7 p.m. Japan should have daylight saving just like the rest of the civilized world. Also, going from New Zealand to Queensland, Australia, I would also make fun of Queenslanders just because it's something everybody does. They're afraid of fluoridated water. And they think that, that daylight saving is a mind-controlled CIA conspiracy or something. And I always used to make fun of them. But no, having lived in Japan now, I've started to appreciate, particularly working cross-border, daylight saving does suck. Maybe move the clock an hour forward and just leave it there. It's nice to have the longer day, that's true. But changing the clocks is just terrible. So, by the way, and plus, I don't have to even think about when it is daylight savings in other places. If people, I guess that must be coming up. Is that what you're talking about? Maybe people it's throwing off the timing. Japan is always the same. I'm always here at the same time, so you can rely on that. But yes, indeed. We've got Sainted Sir saying that daylight saving sucks. Anything else here? Steve Miller, good to see you. With the lockdown on private media and blocking of internet sites media, the BBC and others are returning to radio, short medium wave, to get accurate news into the region. Yeah, it's interesting. I've also seen some commentary. For example, Elon Musk actually is still carrying RT on Starlink internet, for example, although, a lot of Western countries are blocking sort of Russian propaganda. And yeah, it is propaganda. There's I sort of heard a good discussion today that even if it is, you still got to understand what's going on in their brains. The whole idea that, we don't mind rebroadcasting North Korean propaganda because we can laugh at it because we know that we have a diversity of information. I kind of get it can be offensive during times of war to sort of say that that hospital was empty or it was a Nazi base or something like that in Mariupol. But I'd like to think that our institutions and our diversity of free speech is strong enough that we can that we can handle Russian information, and they can't. In fact, it adds to our strength. If you ask me, I think it was our strength in the Cold War that we had a diversity of perspectives, and when that was clear, that two Russians, that sort of enhanced that they were the ones being lied to. So I don't like the information separation that's happening, but good on the BBC and Voice of America and others that are using those to at least get that information across. Plus, I'm sure many Russians are probably very savvy about using things like VPNs and are able to get that information if they want to access it. The problem being that, like in most countries, a lot of people, a high percentage of the population, one would have to assume, doesn't want to go to that much trouble and and believes what they're told. But yeah, it's crazy how quickly we've gone back into a Cold War situation. The only way I can interpret it is that is what the Russian leadership wants, but which is insane. But that is what seems to be happening. Nonetheless, yes, I do appreciate BBC. I assume Voice of America will do the same, and they'll get to hear your voice, your radio voice, which is awesome. So, Steve Miller, great to have you here in the chat indeed. Tokyo 503, good to see you in here. Sadako, I had Mariko in my head. Thank you for correcting me, Tokyo 503. Sadako Ogata, one of actually the UN's best diplomats ever, Japanese, and a woman. Which is still crazy given the underrepresentation of women in Japan and Japan's poor performance on refugee matters. But yeah, she was a giant actually in terms of post-war diplomacy in the UN. So thank you for the correction. Interesting, Arizona does not do daylight saving either. It's funny, so Queensland, Australia, actually on its number plates calls itself the Sunshine State, and I used to laugh sarcastically at that because it is the sunny state of Australia, yet they don't have daylight saving, but so people miss out on a lot of the sunshine. But yeah, I guess in Arizona you wouldn't want the extra sunshine. I don't know, but still good to have you in there. Plus, Tim the Asian Egg, good to have you here in the chat. I'm going to get on to the next story that I've got, which is well, actually, I see they're a bit out of order at the moment. But actually, what I was just talking about with Sadako Ogata, as an example, that, yeah, Japan, in spite of every party sort of acknowledging that there is a representation problem, and it's really strange in Japan. Most countries like the United States that have a problem with gender representation among legislators, normally it's because they use an electoral system called first past the post, where every every election is based on a runoff, a single winner takes all for every geography. And the result of that is that even if 20% of the nation support the Greenies and 10% are communists and 50% are women or whatever, it always means that basically in every local election, those votes all get split that way, and whoever wins, that winner takes all, which means that even if the overall winner only has like 30% of the support, they can get like 80% of the seats. This is a system we had in New Zealand and a lot of countries, including like New Zealand and Japan, that have these sort of systems of democracy based on one winner takes all from every local geography, and realizing the distorting effect that can have on the final outcomes and leaving huge groups unrepresented. Most switch to proportional representation, and proportional representation, which is where the final distribution of seats in the parliament is distributed based on what people vote for, what they want to see in terms of representation by political parties or whatever. And that allows for countries that have that for different multiple political parties. It results in a lot of compromise and a lot of coalitions and sort of weakened government in some ways, but it allows better representation of voices. But the other thing is that you typically associate proportional representation systems with also better representation of women, because the final distribution of seats, although in countries like Japan and Germany and New Zealand actually, which use mixed member proportional systems, you can vote for a local representative, but what they'll do is they'll use party lists to top up the composition at the end. And what happens in countries like Scandinavia is that there are actual rules to ensure that the final composition, the party lists, have to have a certain breakdown, at least by gender. Sometimes, also in the case of New Zealand, there are special dedicated Maori seats and representation as well for certain minority groups, just to ensure that there's a proper representation among legislators in the final outcome. And yet Japan doesn't do that. And while every party thinks that, and sort of pays lip service to the idea that there should be more women, in the House of Representatives, somewhat ironically named in Japan, the number of women who are elected, and this is in a proportional system, only 9.7% of representatives in that are women. I think the House of Councillors is 23.1%. But, among all local assembly members in Japan, it's 14.5%. Japan ranks 166 out of 189 countries on gender representation. And I'm not saying this just to be woke. Um, Representation on things like this is important for making sure that you have good laws. When you talk about issues that affect the populace, like for example, fertility is a huge one in Japan, and the reasons that the challenges of raising children, the availability of health care, on matters that affect women's health, for example, big problem in the US right now. These are being decided on by people who don't understand women's health. They don't. I mean, and while men can be educated and they can learn and they can try to be empathetic and listen, it makes a big difference when you have women who actually have first-hand experience of the problems that are being legislated for. And when you have a representation of 9.7%, certainly that's a big part of the reason that Japan's birth rate is tanking, in South Korea's as well, no doubt. The editorial board of the Mainichi Shimbun has said, after leaving it up to the political parties to try to fix this, Japan needs quotas, and I 100% agree. And the point is, you don't have to actually manipulate. You don't have to make it mandatory to have women running in seats or anything like that. All they have to do is just create some rules for the composition of the party list that they use to top up the seats for the proportional distribution at the end of the election. Not hard to do, and it doesn't even have to be 50% for that, but you can have, when you're starting with a 9.7% representation, the fact that equals bad laws, and the fact that you're not overturning or manipulating the will of, people can still vote for whatever, kamikaze pilot, Tokotai sort of veteran wants to invade China again, Shintaro Ishihara, they can vote for whoever they want for their, who can win in the winner-take-all local representative, but they can still balance that out on the party list at the end of it. Also the fact that, frankly, there have been so few women in the LDP, and, with prime ministers like Abe trying to improve the appearance of things by promoting those women rapidly into the cabinet, when you've got a very small pool to pick from, it turns out that you have people who I thought looked pretty good for the job, like, for example, Keiko Obuchi, the daughter of a former prime minister, who it turned out was, embezzling political funds and destroyed her accounting records on the PCs with the power drill before, I believe, going out to jail and sort of being dismissed. And the number of other women who, again, is partly because of the attention and lack of experience that they end up in jail. There's a lot of pressure being put on a very small group of people because they're the only ones there. So this is really big for Japan. And, the idea that it's an unavoidable outcome in systems like you have in the US, which are winner takes all in every seat. It means that you're going to have huge parts of the population that are not represented. New Zealand had that. We actually voted to change that system in 1990 when I was in high school. And it was a conscious choice to change the system, and it made us think about how these systems create these outcomes. But in Japan, here's the thing. It's something which can easily be fixed, and it can be easily fixed without artificially manipulating things. In the end of the day, people that go on a party list are just people who stand by to go and take these, sit in parliament, who are willing to go sit in parliament if they need to. And putting women in there is something that Japan desperately needs. And given that Japan is capable of producing great leaders like Sadako Ogata, it's just terrible that Japan is still in this situation. So anyway, I'll stop ranting about that, but good on the Mainichi editorial board for that. Back into the comments. In here we've got Quint Rankin, but lately the Russian misinfo bots seem a little bit incompetent, making bad arguments. Actually, I agree with you, Quint Rankin. In fact, the Russian propaganda bots are doing so badly, it makes me think that maybe those weren't Russian propaganda bots on Facebook trying to tip the US election. Maybe that's what people in America actually thought. I don't know. I feel better about Americans believing that those were like a Russian manipulated chatbots that made America vote the way that they did in the last election, and all the conspiracy stuff and all the QAnon stuff. I feel better thinking that Americans were manipulated by Russian chatbots into believing in QAnon. But looking at how they're going right now, it's looking increasingly like, no, Americans were totally just doing that to themselves, which I feel slightly sad about. I actually wish that the Russian bots were doing a little bit better in a way. So I feel very mixed feelings about that. Steve Miller, there's currently a crowdfunded effort broadcasting your program into Ukraine and Russia on shortwave. Nice. That's cool. That's like World War II stuff. I mean, not that World War II is cool or anything like that. Well, I mean, it's a little bit cool. I mean, it's cool that they're broadcasting. I mean, well, it's Cold War, isn't it? They're literally broadcasting Steve Miller's Voice of America on shortwave into Russia. Yeah, that's crazy. But that is very cool. Um, Down here, EDIR. Hi, a bit late today. Sorry, no, don't say sorry at all. And remember, everybody, of course, you can check this out on the audio version, which I'll post immediately after this goes recorded. But of course, you can sit here and enjoy it with the comments and see my face live on the YouTube channel as well if you're listening to this on audio. Um, you may see the video and then immediately think I'm only ever going to watch this on audio again. But whatever gets you going, I now provide it with or without my face. So there's that. Crypto Airy, interesting. Good to have you in here, Crypto Airy. Yeah, nice to see lots of handle names in here as well. Power Drill Obachi, her name is Yuko. God damn it, did I say Keiko? Tokyo 503, thank you for correcting me again. I'm getting I think the name Keiko came up because I was thinking of the Peruvian president's daughter, and I'm mixing them up. I mean, they're kind of the same thing. But thank you for correcting me. It was indeed, I think it was Yuko Obuchi. You might be as well, but Power Drill Obuchi anyway, which I still think is a great nickname. Back into it. Among right now, it just looks like people are going through like shopping lists of different types of bodily fluids that they can throw at Russia, the Russian government, at least at the moment. Not a lot that Japan can do, as I've explained last week. That Japan has basically always been disengaged from Russia over the islands dispute thing. But that said, so long as these peace talks have been going on with Russia since 1956, but really in earnest for about the last 15 years, and really not making very much progress. But Japan has sort of made a point that they've said that they won't use the same language they use with other territories, saying that they're the inherent, part of Japanese territory. They're sort of dropping that sort of language to leave open the possibility of a sort of a compromise, including having two of the islands or a gradual handback or something like that to sort of, allow talks to continue. So Japan took a symbolic stand on the islands when they said that they were basically breaking off the peace talks, which frankly weren't going well anyway. I've talked about them here before, where Japan was doing the peace talks to talk about getting the four islands back from Russia, and Russia was joining the talks, thinking that they would promise not to take Hokkaido as well. They were coming at it with different perspectives all along, and that was always pretty clear. When Japan's foreign minister this week said that given that we've not been making any progress right now, and now's not a good time to be talking to Russia about, peace talks or whatever over this territorial dispute, Japan's going to go back to reasserting that the Northeast Territories, the Southern Kuril Islands, are an inherent part of Japanese territory. To which the Russian government responded by placing missiles, ground to surface-to-air missiles on those islands, and ran some drills shooting them at at targets just to check that they still work, of course. I've talked about this before, by the way, that these islands are interesting history. I've seen some other people post during the week, of course, the whole colonization of Hokkaido, and of course the suffering of the Ainu minority within that, and the way that their culture was certainly eradicated. There are a lot of people still who, some don't know that they have Ainu heritage, by the way. Some do, and they try to retain it. The community from those islands that lives in Nemuro and is actually very vocal about campaigning about trying to get the Japanese government to get their homes back. They largely claim that group does have Ainu heritage. But certainly those islands were colonized by Japan. So I had some what about kind of comments on Twitter saying, well, Russia's just taking the islands just like Japan did. It's not quite that simple. I mean, these were mutually recognized and settled territories based on treaties predating and postdating the Russo-Japanese War, including Japan having Sakhalin, by the way. Japan voluntarily gave up Sakhalin, but it didn't give up its claim to those four islands. And also remembering that those residents were, unlike in Japan, although I've seen people sort of dispute, and I haven't seen an account saying that Japan went and actually killed all the people on those islands and replaced them with Japanese colonists. That doesn't seem to be the case, but certainly Ainu were militarily defeated. There's no question of that. And it was incorporated into Japan late in the 19th century. But that said, what the Russians did was they put everybody onto, well, I guess boats at first, and then trains, and they shipped them across, and they put all of the residents, imagine them going into Ukraine right now and cleaning out everybody from towns and shipping them off to the gulags in Siberia. That's literally what happened for more than a decade for the people who lived on those islands. And when they were released, they are back in Hokkaido and the closest place waiting to go home. So that does make it different. But yeah, so now Japan's taken a little bit more of a belligerent tone on that and various other things. I mean, Japan has about 4% of its energy comes from Sakhalin, or they're investing there, and they've pointed out that if they say that they're going to leave Japan, if they're going to leave Sakhalin Island, just north of Japan, China might come and take over Japan's investments in those gas projects up there, which Japan sees as important for ensuring energy security. But it's complicated at the moment, obviously, which has led to the inevitable Japanese government talking about, and actually various conversations that, again, the fact that oil prices are going crazy, and right now, I mean, the US has gone and said, trying to guarantee supplies of oil and gas, particularly to European nations that rely on Russia for oil and gas at the moment, going to Saudi Arabia and saying, hey, would you guys mind pumping some more oil to give it to the Europeans, and the Saudis saying, we will if you'll let us massacre more Yemenis, please. And the other alternative going to Venezuela, which is also having many of its own similar problems. All of this reflects why, and we're doing this in order to obtain basically fuel and energy, which is contributing to climate change, which is an existential problem for humanity at the moment. So all the more reason where I don't like nuclear power, and I'd really prefer not to have it. In fact, I just realized I didn't even mention that this week was the 11th anniversary of the Great East Japan earthquake, tsunami, and of course the on the following day, on the 12th of March, was when the nuclear accident at Fukushima happened. I'm from New Zealand, a country where nuclear power and nuclear everything except for radiology for cancer treatments is outlawed. But, I think my country is wrong, actually. And I do think that while nuclear energy isn't great, and I'd prefer to do without it, I hope that we will. I hope we'll get fusion and space-based solar power and everything in time. In the short term, this is exactly where you want to be able to get your energy, not from oil or petroleum or gas, and not have to rely on Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Russia for it. You want to be able to make it where you are and get all the energy you need. And, until we can do that with cleaner sources and safer sources, if I had to choose between getting energy from a nuclear power plant in Japan or getting it from a Russian gas pipeline, I'd feel a lot better about it being in a nuclear power plant, even with Fukushima having happened. Again, I'd like to move on to other sources, but and also thinking that, for example, you can use nuclear power to electrolyze water to create hydrogen, which you can actually use like gas or fuel, for example, for ships and airplanes and so on. As well as all the other things going on with renewable energy at the moment. So, yeah, on the one hand, I mean, it seems convenient to push for nuclear, because of the Ukraine war, but there's a reason behind it. It's actually a key for energy independence, which Japan has no oil and no gas and no real means of energy independence. It has some renewables, but it has a lot of nuclear power plants, which is partly for this reason, and the fact that you can now create effectively a replacement for petroleum using electricity. You need electricity to make electricity, but you can actually replace. You can create hydrogen fuels with electricity and water, i.e., a nuclear power plant and water, if you needed to, or any other source. I'm kind of with them here, actually. I would like, within my lifetime, to have all the nuclear power plants shut down. I'd love for them to be replaced with fusion or some other sort of clean means of generation. But I think that the international reliance on countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia for energy is not good for anybody, and it's something that we should be trying to get the hell out of. If not for climate change, for security, for exactly the situation that we're facing right now. It shouldn't be something that countries like that hold over us to be able to, violate human rights with impunity. And to me, that's even worth tolerating, nuclear power for a time. And I'm from New Zealand, so there you go. Again, companies sanctioning. Of course, Russia is saying that they will now confiscate all the assets of companies that are sanctioning them, including right now. Uniqlo said that they weren't going to sanction Russia, and then there was a lot of blowback in Japanese society, so they changed their mind and they are closing down their stores there. They said the old Michael Jordan line on Republicans wear sneakers too. Uniqlo's Yanai boss actually said, Russians need clothes too. We're going to sell them to them. Our heat tech is wonderful this time of year. He didn't actually say that final bit, but that's probably what he was thinking. But he kind of caved into pressure, and they did agree to stop selling. Toyota has shut down and repatriated its citizens from Russia that were in car manufacturers. Apparently, there are 400 and something companies in Russia, Japanese companies in Russia, and nearly all of them have repatriated their Japanese citizens. Interesting that Sony has suspended PlayStation console sales in Russia, which I understand. It's a good move, stopping to sell PlayStations. Apart from the fact they could use those chips, of course, to power missiles and do all sorts of stuff. They're actually really sophisticated, computing power inside those. My only question is not why Sony has suspended PlayStation 5 sales in Russia. It's why are they also punishing Japan? I keep trying to look for a PlayStation 5 and I still cannot find one. And I'm being mocked on Instagram where I see ads to where I can go buy a PlayStation 5 and I click and it's always sold out. And I'm like, Sony, I didn't invade Ukraine. Why are you sanctioning me like this? This isn't fair. I understand punishing Russia, but please, not cool, Sony. I am not planning to take over any European or Middle Eastern or even East Asian countries. I have no immediate plans, so I don't know why you're sanctioning me, Sony. I am not Russia, so yes, free the PlayStation. But certainly, I mean, I don't know if they're not if not selling them to Russia means there's a chance of any more stock ending up in Japan. I'm all for it. I'm still waiting to get one, but we'll see. So yeah. That's what's going on there. Jumping back into the comments, I don't see any other people shouting me out, but yes, Tokyo 503 pointing out that because Power Drill Obuchi's father's name was Keizo Obuchi, the man who I believe, wasn't he the one responsible? I could be mixing this up again, but I believe that he was going to defeat Japanese deflation with the 2,000 yen bill. Which is actually, it's the Japanese $20 note. It's a wonderful thing. Nobody uses it. I've got a friend who collects them and uses them just to start conversations with people. It's got like it's got the Okinawan sort of castle, Shuri Castle on it. It's a very cool note, but it is being removed from circulation at the moment. But yeah, that's right. Her dad, Keizo Obuchi. That's why I called her Keiko Obuchi, but I'll just call her Power Drill because it's a cooler name. Mr. Cordy Chet, behave. I am not. I can neither confirm nor deny that I am developing weapons labs in order to get PlayStation 5s. A couple of other stories, not too many. Oh, but you know what? Look at that. 5 minutes left to go, and I still do have a bunch of stories. Another cyber attack on Toyota affiliate on Denso. There've been another ransomware attack using the Pandora software. Apparently, they came out with this very quickly, but again, no hints that it's from a particular nation state actor or whatever. But it is another case. This is another case, by the way, where the affiliate was attacked in Germany. It's kind of prominent. I mean, in a way, I think these things are good because hopefully it promotes awareness of the need for cybersecurity around this. As someone who works in IT, certainly companies like this, I would hope, keep systems, have backups that, if a system gets captured like this, they can still keep images and so on that they can restore to replace. You might just lose a day's data or whatever. Again, I have no idea what the impact is going to be, but another big prominent ransomware attack on Denso. It's kind of hard to tell if this is anything to do with the conflict and Toyota's withdrawal from Russia in retaliation, or if it's just opportunistic or just regular crime. But yeah, there is that. Another story which got some news this week, which may just reflect perhaps the state of peace, although also the fact that this is still a thing is also a problem. It often comes up in the news how there are schools, particularly private schools, but even public schools in different parts of Japan, that have weird school rules for students. A lot of them seem very, very arbitrary. And, the thinking behind them often in some ways seems to reflect more the issues of the people making the rules than anything with the rules that they're being made for. In fact, two examples of rules that have sort of gotten some discussion lately. One was the old rules. There was a school in Kagoshima in Japan which has a rule against girls having ponytails, like in that photo, because apparently the principal or the vice principal who came up with the rule said that it might get the boys overly excited, being able to see the back of the neck of girls. To which stunned PTA members and online readers said, yeah, I think that normal people wouldn't react that way. I think you're saying more about yourself than you are about your students, to which I agree. Also, of course, the many stories that have gone out over the years about mandatory black hair, and how even with like exchange students, even like literally the New Zealand, or Ukrainian exchange student who's sent to a Japanese high school because the high school rule is that everyone has to have black hair. They literally force naturally blonde-haired people, or naturally in Japan, you do get brown-haired people. You do get variation. You get people with curly hair. You get people with brown hair. It happens in Japan. It's rare, but people are not naturally all black. But again, the idea being from schools that if someone has naturally brown hair and other people see that, they'll see that and they'll think that that person was allowed to dye their hair, and other people will want to emulate it. So in order to discourage people from thinking it's okay to dye their hair, they force people with brown hair to dye their hair black. And the fact that with half kids, for example, and even in extreme cases in the past with exchange students, you have people who don't want to dye their hair, who are being forced by the school to dye their hair in order to stop other people from dyeing their hair, and getting like scalp damage and psychologically traumatized from it and so on. You don't see that sort of stuff so much anymore, although you do hear about it from private schools and whatnot. The other thing, of course, is that there are schools that have like rules about the underwear, like girls' schools have rules about the underwear that they're allowed to wear, and actually they have male teachers will do inspections to check that the girl students are wearing white and not colored underwear. Again, it points to issues being far more with the teachers than the students, and there have been enough. There's been enough, particularly I think the age of the internet and social media discourse has now shown up that there's enough sort of disgust and outrage at this sort of thing coming up again and again, that Tokyo has just unilaterally said now that from this next school year, starting in April, that all of these rules will be banned, and that central sort of school rules around dress code and whatnot will be centrally decided. They won't leave it up to, frankly, the perversions and hang-ups of elderly school teachers to decide on these things anymore, and that's a good thing. But Quinn Rankid asks, who pays for the dye? In stories that I've seen stories where teachers have actually forcibly, physically, like assaulted and forced people to have their hair dyed. Normally, it would be imposed on the student as one of the rules, but it still is ridiculous. Tim the Asian, the back of necks and ankles. Yeah, keep it at home there. Back of ankles. I mean, whatever gets you going. Hey, knees. Who knows? People are weird. What can I say? But yes, at least those factors are going to be reduced in Tokyo by having uniform rules that won't allow, frankly, for principals that shouldn't be principals or allowed near kids. Another big story this week was new Korean president was elected, Yoon Suk-yeol. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But interesting case. He was a public prosecutor who was actually investigating corruption in the current Moon administration, and was fired basically for investigating people around the president's inner circle too much. And so, he got into politics sort of as a novice and became, the conservative candidate and won the election by like less than 1%. Of course, Korea, unlike Japan, does have a single president. They have an executive like the US system, and they do have a popular vote for that. It's really hard to imagine that in Japan, frankly, because it's so based on factions and, sort of, shadowy backroom power brokers and stuff like that, whereas Korea is very much in the open. They have single presidents that are elected. The dynamic in Korea is always the same with Japan relations, that the left-wing parties, ironically, tend to be more, frankly, racial, ethno-nationalist. They tend to be much more Korea for Koreans, and they use that to emphasize that we should be friends with North Korea and we should all hate Japan. And they always turn to sort of Japan bashing as a way to sort of rally the base. And it is a weak point of conservatives who are always seen as being a little bit soft and friendly towards Japan and secretly still wanting the jackboots back in Korea. It's like when Japanese fascists ran things. And on the flip side of that, you've had, of course, right-wing Korean dictators like Gunhae Park's father, for example, Park Chung-hee, I think, was his name, who was actually educated in Japan and served in the Japanese military, the Imperial Army, and loved Japan when he was a dictator of South Korea. And so you have this association of right-wingers being friendly with Japan, and typically, even nowadays, that is what plays out. Of course, the other thing that plays out is that Korean presidents almost always end up in jail. I mean, here you actually have a prosecutor now, so he's got a better chance maybe than everyone before him of not ending up in jail. But he has said that he wants to have forward-looking relations with Japan and wants to reinvigorate diplomacy and then getting along with Japan again. I'm sure there are people in Japan who think, oh my God, does this mean we have to talk to them again? I get the feeling that just the piece of, basically having two neighbors, it's like Australia and Indonesia, they're right beside each other, and yet they pretend like each other don't exist. And that's kind of what Japan and South Korea have fallen into, and frankly, it kind of works. I mean, South Korea is, always going to be, frankly, there's always going to be votes in South Korea in pointing out what a terrible, neighbor, and what a terrible, conquering overlord of South Korea, of the Korean Peninsula, Japan was. Japan's never going to get off the hook for that. I mean, just the same way that I'm pretty sure you can have a long future ahead of Ukrainians holding the current conflict over Russia, for example, as well. But there again, there are people who recognize, to me, I think it's natural. It would be great if Korea and Japan could get along and be friends and, move on from the past. That said, Korea's under no obligation to move on from the past. They're welcome to hold on to that if that's what they want to do. But it's complicated when you have some people who want to move on and make friends with Japan and some who don't. The hope is it does seem like this person is going to be at least try to be Japan friendly. Although the pattern always is that they're Japan friendly for a while and then their ratings tank, and then they try to turn things around by trying to show that they, by doing something anti-Japanese, and then it all goes to hell and they end up in jail. But, I would love for Japan to be friends with South Korea, so I'm hopeful that things might improve. But, I'm not expecting much. I think it's probably better for them. I mean, this is, as I've said before, this is a Woody Allen, Mia Farrow situation. No amount of marriage counseling is going to get them back together. In fact, I think it's probably better for everyone if you just let them get on with their lives separately. But America's always trying to force them back together. And we'll see. Can Woody and Mia get back together? We'll find out. I've gamed the Pocky system. I know that Chocomint is only supposed to last for the summer, but I stocked up. They all go off in March. The expiry date is March, but I still have 20 boxes left, and I'm going to hold on until the next Chocomint season, which will probably be late May or June. But yeah, it's beautiful weather. We have the cherry blossoms about to come out, and I still have Chocomint Pocky sticks. And I've got 20 boxes, so I'm going to hold on. I'm going to make it until they issue new ones on the new season, even though they'll probably be expired by that time. But there we go. That is, I'm holding on for dear life with those. Check out if you like. It's going to start playing, isn't it? I've been making some of these videos. Here's the video I made using music from DJ Sunny Side Up, which was awesome. And thank you again for the music, DJ Sunny Side Up. I do appreciate it. And that's all the topics I have for tonight. And it is 11:36. I'm 6 minutes over, but that is fine. I didn't talk tonight much about the anniversary of the Great East Japan earthquake. I mean, it's funny. It is now fading into time. It is 11 years ago. I still remember the earthquake and the event and the events around it like it was yesterday. It's true, even in Japan, although I kind of resent the fact that the Fukushima accident overshadows the tsunami, which killed 20,000 people. And, I feel like that was a forgotten part of this when it really should be the most significant part of the whole ordeal. But truth is, it wasn't. It was really influential that it happened, and and frankly, there are people who are affected by the tsunami were able to move back, but people who are affected by the nuclear plant, there are still people that can't go back, and that is a great shame. It's a good reminder to everyone to make sure that you're always ready for earthquakes and natural disasters wherever you are. I mean, it was certainly it was a huge earthquake in Tokyo. I mean, we were 500 kilometers away, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. Um, so I can't even imagine what it was like closer. And knowing that our turn will come here like it will everywhere else. So of course, stay safe, everybody. Let's go through one last run through the comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Lots of people chatting, which is good to see. Indeed, the back and neck of ankles, like we said before. Kerberos Tenshi, who knows what Hiko Simon has been searching for when not on TT? Who knows? Who knows indeed? Eric Bailey, Japan has a crisis that no one is talking about. What will become of Asahi Super Dry? What will become of Asahi Super Dry? They are changing the formula. And the new one is for shite. I tasted it. God help us. Oh no, are they new coking? Are they new coking Asahi Super Dry? I'm not a big beer person, but as beer goes, I like Asahi Super Dry, or at least the old taste. I didn't know that they were changing it. I'm sorry about that. I guess people will literally be pouring one on the ground for it. Magpie882, I saw those super nationalist guys in their black vans out in Shibuya today. Any clue what might have brought them out? I mean, hemorrhoids, who knows? They probably needed to walk around and stretch their legs. Remember in Japan, a-holes like that exist in every location, but they're a super, super small minority in Japan, and most people look at them like the freaks that they are. But, they get out, maybe they'll be out there. They've got a few, I mean, their tropes are always the same. We hate the communists, we hate North Korea, we hate Russia. And right now, they do bring up the Russia territorial dispute and so on. They like to bash Russia. I think Russia, bashing Russia would be a popular one at the moment, saying that we should get the islands back or something. They pretty much go after everyone. There are a few, there are different variations of the groups. Of course, there's some really nasty ones that actually go after ethnic Koreans, those are the ones that really should be locked up on the spot. The ones that just like to go around in front of the Russian embassy playing like loud World War II music and doing who knows what. I mean, I don't really care that much about it. It's nowadays, maybe it's just the part of Tokyo that I'm in. I saw some noise trucks the other day, and it was the first time I'd actually seen them in like maybe a couple of years. So they're pretty much irrelevant, and I don't really care what they have to say. They really are super like 0.0001% or whatever. But they probably felt like having a party as a substitute for a barbecue. So who knows what brought them out? I suspect Russia. I blame Russia. Yeah. Final round of comments. We've got Traveling Gabriel. The run videos are awesome. I'm glad that you like them. I love how they look. I mean, they hardly get any views or likes or anything, but I like them. So yeah, I'm going to keep posting them. I've been getting some love on the Insta360 software for it as well, which is kind of nice. I've been picked up by the editors on that twice. So I'm starting to add on the hashtags. I'm hoping. I'm not really big enough to get free stuff, but it'd be kind of cool actually. I'm a big fan of the product. So yeah. Eric Bailey, who cares about Pocky? They're taking our beer. Well, yeah, I care more about Pocky than beer, frankly. I'm not a big beer person, honestly. I've hardly drank, and I don't think I've drank since the pandemic started. Oh, I did drink once. We had a get together when it was briefly good with people at work. So I've had one beer in like 2 years. I'm looking forward to having another. It's not that I don't drink. I'm looking forward to have another beer. It's just I don't drink by myself and I don't drink at home. So I'm looking forward to when I can have a beer with all of you. Actually, I'd love to have a tweet up sometime when all this is finally over at some point, and hopefully Asahi beer will be normal at that point. King Ichiban is better, says Aaron. Kerberos Tenshi, EDIS. I've hoarded them, and now he has to get rid of them before they expire. But don't worry, I will get rid of them. I've got a system. Sainted Sir, thanks indeed. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for keeping me company. Yeah, World War II Japanese music. It's a slightly different thing to Lil Marlene, but whatever gets you going. Anyway, that is all the topics for tonight. Thank you for keeping me company. Remember, stay safe from the Rona. Really, really hope that things can improve in Ukraine and that all that craziness there can stop. And see you all next week. Remember, 10:30 Japan Standard Time. I've got nowhere else to go. If you like the video, that's the only thing I'm doing it for at this point, for the likes and the peanuts. So throw me a peanut, click on the like. See you next week. Remember, follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up during the week. And boom, peace. See you later. Awkwardly end stream. End. No Hanami this year. Oh, there's a question there. Sorry, quick thing. Hanami this year. Zach, HND787, I think that's his Twitter handle. He is organizing a Hanami. I'm not going. I mean, I've got a kid going to a school full of COVID, so I probably shouldn't be going from that perspective. And I still personally am not going to go. And if I got it from there and brought it home, that would also be a problem. So I won't go this year. But look, if you want to go, if you're in Tokyo and you want to go, check out Phoenix 787's channel, and there is information about it there. Victor, I saw, was shouting it out. I might go next year, but I'm not going to go this year. But yeah, you can get information about that on Twitter, so go check that out. Throw me a peanut, click like, and I'll see you all later. Peace again. Front of hand, not back of hand. Back of hand's a problem in New Zealand. Definitely front of hand. Okay, ending the video now. That was an awkward, protracted ending.